Hello people, Nintendo Metawata here, bringing you another reaction video on Gaijin Goomba's Cyber Shadow Teaches Ninja Philosophy. Which ninja? Yeah, last time my reaction videos were a little bit bad because I think the volume might have been a little too loud and stuff like that. I also I also have the ability to pause and play the YouTube video with the K key. Anyways, yeah. Hopefully this gets better. And now, let us start in 3, 2, 1, start.
This video is brought to you by Surfshark. Hey everyone, Gaijin Goomba here. Man, this is the weirdest problem that we've had with this show. See, for years now, we've been getting people asking us to cover various ninja characters within the scene of Cyberpunk. And while that might seem like a niche within a niche, it's actually so massive with so many games that I legitimately have no idea where in the world to get started.
Right? I mean, there's Ghost Runner, which a lot of you suggested we look at, and trust me, we definitely want to. And despite how bad Cyberpunk 2077 was, there was a ton we could talk about in terms of being a cyberpunk ninja in the game. And for future releases, there's Moonrider and Bushiden, both massive throwbacks to the theme of a heroic ninja in a dystopian cyberpunk world.
So yeah, there's a lot of choices for a double niche genre that we thought would have gone by the way of Strider at this point, but out of the near dozen cyberpunk ninja games on hand, there is one that we just absolutely need to talk about. Because for the first time, we may have found a ninja game that doesn't find inspiration from weapons, armor, or techniques of shinobi, but rather philosophy and aesthetic beliefs, all found within the recently released Cyber Shadow, a retro indie platformer developed by Mechanical Head and published by Yacht Club Games. This game, man, how do you even describe it?
Simple. It's OG Ninja Gaiden that doesn't waste your freaking time. Oh, it's still hard as nails, don't get me wrong, but imagine that balls-busting platforming, close-cut combat with highly mobile enemies, and bosses that, while they don't make you wait for vulnerability periods, absolutely wreck you if you're not careful as you study their movements. Take all that old-school challenge and rip out the absurd, outdated life system and timer, and instead, add in greater tools of movement, instantaneous reloads, and absolutely banging soundtrack. Even the side activity of breaking through firewalls and net security within the Cyberdrive is an intense platforming challenge where most other games would just incorporate some sort of unrelated minigame.
Well, from the early days of cyberpunk games like Shadowrun to even the aforementioned Ghost Runner, the net has always been about personification and avatars. Though, I have to laugh at how outdated this is, because if the computer that these ninjas were trying to hack had a VPN, rather than coming to their destination after a tricky platforming section, they just end up in the back end of some completely different country. And if a VPN works that well in a fictional universe of cyberpunk ninjas, imagine how helpful it would be in real life. Yes, my friends, we gotta give a big shout out to this video's sponsor, Surfshark. Because, to be completely honest, VPNs are a critical safeguard against hackers, cyberpunk or otherwise. Basically how it works is that when you connect to a VPN like Surfshark, you are running your IP through a separate encrypted server, which means if anyone or anything is attempting to grab your info, it won't see you, but rather the secondary server that you're working through. But what sets aside Surfshark from other VPNs are their unique services that enhance their VPN experience. Things like Whitelister that allows certain apps and websites to bypass the VPN, as VPNs can cause miscommunication errors with things like banks, or even Multi-Hop that allows you to connect through multiple countries rather than just one isolated location. Plus, should your VPN connection ever break, Surfshark has a built-in kill switch that keeps you from being open and exposed online.
Yeah, try getting out of that, Shadow.
So, if Surfshark sounds like something you'd like to try out, head on over to surfshark.deal/Gaijin and use the code Gaijin to get 83% off a 2-year plan. Yeah, 83% off of something that most of us wouldn't be caught dead without when it comes to online security. And Surfshark will slap on an extra 3 months free, too. So keep your computer safe from net thieving ninjas with Surfshark today. Anywho, yeah, I think it's a no-brainer that everyone's just reveling in how well put together and challenging Cyber Shadow is. But you know what's not being talked about? The story. While every reviewer I've seen praises Cyber Shadow for its difficulty and evolution of the NES formula, most of them just write the story off as being, quote, basic, serviceable at best, and didn't have any real resonance or reason for existing.
Well, hey, to be fair, the story's pretty crazy. In the far future, within the limits of Mecha City, a progeny scientist named Dr. Progen, I see what you did there, constructed the very first synthetic humanoids in history, serving as replacements for humans in hazardous positions. And all the while, an esoteric clan of ninja led by Dr. Progen's daughter protected the city by taking out and extracting malfunctioning synths. But that wasn't their only job. The primary position of this clan was to protect the balance of a mystical energy called Essence and its home realm of the Ethos, a sort of afterlife realm where all energies of the universe originate, and where the immortal consciousness of the clan's members travel to after death. Lorded over by an all-powerful dragon who charged the clan as keepers of the balance of Essence and the Ethos. One day, though, the master fell into a freak accident and was slowly dying. Absolutely desperate to save his daughter, Dr. Progen began to execute rumored experiments in conjunction with mysterious disappearances of clan members in an attempt to save her. As the player character Shadow laments on the master and his feelings for her, the entire city is ripped apart from an explosion from the city's power plant. Now awakened in the synth body, it's up to Shadow to save not only his master, but the entire clan and stop the mad Dr. Progen and his rampaging synths. That about cover it?
More or less, and yeah, I know that really does sound like the overblown insanity that most Cyberpunk games take after, but you might be asking yourself at this point, why ninjas? Why use traditional-looking ninjas for this futuristic game about robot people taking over the world? Why not use a couple of big dudes and ladies with guns, which seems to be the go-to for Cyberpunk side-scrolling action games? And that's not the first conflict I found either when trying to make a video about this game. I'll be honest with you guys, when I first started analyzing Cyber Shadow, I honestly couldn't find much that was ninja within the game's mechanics. I mean, sword slashing, shuriken throwing, dashing, fireball lobbing, wall climbing, it was extremely basic stuff that really wouldn't make up a solid video. But, the more I followed the story, the more I began to realize something. Shadow, Dr. Progen, the synths, the clan, the ethos, essence, everything within this game's plot 100% revolves around Taoist-influenced Buddhism, one of the 3 great roots of ninjutsu.
Yes, the story of Cyber Shadow, the one factor of the game that everyone seems to be ignoring, has more to do with the written history of shinobi philosophy and, well, let's just call it what it is, religion, than any other ninja game we've covered.
But I'm sure that we've just opened up a giant can of worms of confusion, so let's go to basics. For starters, how in the world does ninjutsu have...
You know, I didn't even know that ninjas were Buddhists or wherever. I thought they were a Japanese thing or a Chinese thing. Started out as Chinese and moved to Japan. Didn't know they had this kind of philosophy where they had to, you know. But then again, if you have seen the TV tropes of ninjas meditating and stuff like that on certain elements, I think you would pretty much make the connection that it's into Buddha. So yeah, it might be a coincidence, but it's not a coincidence. This is actually real. Okay, continuing.
Roots in Taoism and Buddhism, you might be wondering. Well, there are a couple of hints here and there that link the two together, such as the Kuji-in's connection with Taoist-originated Buddhist mudras, but the most dedicated peek into the philosophy of shinobi comes from the Bansen Shukai, under Volume 3, Seishin 2, The Correct Mind. Within this volume teaches how shinobi would take up the philosophy of the 5 elements, taken directly from Taoist principle. And with this principle, they could overcome the fear of death, as they believed that as all things are a part of the 5 elements, they themselves were a part of this universal essence that was neither destroyed or made, with all things in existence, including themselves, being made of fire, earth, water, wood, and metal. It's a very Final Fantasy VII livestream sort of concept, of which I think is best explained through this one excerpt. In heaven and earth, the 5 elements are found in the concept of yin and yang. Spring is followed by summer, summer by autumn, autumn by winter, then spring comes again. Everything is born, then grows up. When having grown up, it changes. When having changed, then it is settled. When settled, it stores or conceals itself. Then it is born again, just like a ring without end. Therefore, nothing continues to exist in the world forever, but nothing else ceases to exist forever simultaneously. When
That's
it dies,
deep.
it only goes back to the 5 elements. Further on in the volume, and continuing the hot takes from Chinese Taoism, I think the philosophy of not fearing death is best explained from this other excerpt. Wu Zu says that if you are prepared to die, then this allows you to survive. Opposed to this, if you guard yourself with a mind to preservation, it will turn out that you will die anyway. Wu Zu also says that if you put your life above all, you are sure to die. Finally, there's a concept in Sei Shin 2 that speaks of the one chi, or one energy. When this principle is felt and moved, it changes into the one chi, which forms the flow of energy. When the flow begins to move, it is called yang, and when it finishes moving and is quiet, it is called yin. Time is divided into 5 kinds of chi: wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. They are called the 5 elements.
And this is where Cyber Shadow's story comes into play. And for the record, we will be spoiling the entire story. So if you care about it, now's the time to hit
I
pause
don't
on this
care.
video and go check it out. Though, considering how dismissive everyone's been about it, I don't think there are a lot of folks who care. So maybe by the end of all this, you'll see why this story's dismissal has been so freaking aggravating for us. I will say this, strap in, because there's a lot to cover. As you play through the game, you start to learn the whole story behind Dr. Progen and the nature of both essence and ethos. Turns out the good doctor has been extracting human essence to power his synths, as well as experimenting on transferring human consciousness into his robots. For instance, Shadow's great in-game rival Apparator, a ninja within the clan who believed himself to be a progeny and constantly looked down on Shadow. He allowed himself to have his essence transferred from his human body to a high-powered robot one via Dr. Progen. And why'd he do that exactly? Well, we find out that Progen's daughter slash the clan's master, no, she actually doesn't have a name, was so insanely ill that she had to have essence constantly pumped into her. But not just any human essence, essence from the members of her clan. That's why you keep trying to rescue them throughout each level. But Apparator was so desperate for not only obtaining more power for himself, but also saving the master, that he was willing to betray and hunt down his entire clan alongside Progen's synth army. In an especially shocking scene, we see that happen in action. A synth soldier guns down a clansman and extracts his essence from his crippled body. All the while, the ninja begs for death because if his essence can cross over into the ethos, he can continue his clan's mission of maintaining balance of essence, as well as figuring out why the clan can't sense their master anymore. So what in the heck is this ethos we keep hearing about? Well, according to the game, it's a realm after life, but not exactly death. It's where the clan's essence and consciousness goes on to live, as they continue their purpose to, quote, hear the will of the dragon and uphold the balance of flow of essence. A spiritual
So,
energy that is
the
neither
afterlife-
good nor bad, but more of a yin-yang sort of equilibrium that makes up all things. In fact, you actually travel to the ethos a decent number of times through the various shrines that Dr. Progen's been experimenting on in order to open a gate into the ethos and harvest all of that essence. And within the ethos, you hear about the elementals. Within the clan, there's the master at the center who hears the dragon the loudest, and the 4 elementals around her. Basically, clansmen who are the most attuned to the flow of essence and can manipulate it with greater natural ease than the rest of the clan. These being the elementals of fire, water, earth, and lightning. Though, not gonna lie, the tapestry symbol for the earth elemental looks more like wood if you ask me. While the 3 are accounted for, the 4th, the lightning, hasn't been reincarnated yet. Though the game oh so subtly hints that it's actually Shadow. But anyway. The big problem that the clan and ethos is having is that not all of their members are returning to be reincarnated. Every member that was caught and had their essence removed is stuck in a sort of limbo. This includes their master and Shadow, who's currently in a synth body. Towards the end of the game, we learned that Progen had also become so desperate to stay alive and to save his daughter, he transplanted both his essence and her essence into synth bodies. While Progen eventually went completely insane, taking the 3 elementals and siphoning their power for himself, he locked away the master, / his daughter, into a time stasis pod so that she would stay alive forever. After finally defeating Progen once and for all, the 3 elementals are released, your heritage as the 4th elemental comes to light, and as Shadow finally frees the master, the woman that he loves so dearly, the 5 of them fade out of their synth body prisons, form as 5 elemental energies, and drift away into the ethos. Ya get it? 5 energy elementals? Dr. Progen becoming obsessed with preventing he and his daughter from death?
Okay, Lil G, I think they got it. But yeah, all of these key points in the story, Dr. Progen becoming obsessed with forcibly keeping his daughter alive, Apparator becoming equally obsessed with power and immortality, the clans fracturing at the fact that their clansmen, the elementals, and their master were unable to be tracked back into the ethos, all of this is tied to those two concepts I mentioned from the Bansen Shukai a few minutes back. Within the clan, there are the 4 elementals of fire, water, earth/wood, and lightning. But there's also the master that makes up the 5th of the core 5, and it's those 5 that the entire clan revolves around. And the game states that the 4 elementals and the master are reborn in each generation, and that due to Projin and the synths, they were closed off from the ethos, preventing them from reincarnating. Much in the same way that the Bansen Shukai states that for Shinobi, quote, "Nothing continues to exist in the world forever, but nothing ceases to exist forever simultaneously. When it dies, it only goes back to the 5 elements." The 3 captured elementals, Shadow is the 4th elemental trapped in a synth body in order to save his master from her synth body and time stasis, all of them needed to be liberated from their stagnant states due to having their essence trapped in Projin's synth technology. That is the whole point of the core story. Much in the same way how Shinobi believed that they themselves were a part of the 5 elements that continuously flowed from one state of existence to another, an idea that there is no death or life, only the movement of the 5. With this concept most clearly personified in the game at the very end, when Shadow and the other 3 elementals and their master transform into 5 separate forms of energy and return back into the ethos. All the while, Dr. Projin and Apparator, in their desire to live forever and Projin's desire to keep his daughter alive forever, are personifications of what the Bansen Shukai says about obsessing over staying alive. Again, quote, "If you put your life above all, you are sure to die." Dr. Projin stayed alive, sure, but he went insane and almost destroyed the entire world, effectively killing the kind doctor he once was. Apparator, in his mad desire for power, immortality, and keeping his master alive, completely lost himself in his own madness and died as well. Then the master herself, being locked away in a synth body, kept in a chamber that had her frozen in time, she was effectively dead in stasis, unable to return to the energies of the ethos. In fact, you could say that the entire concept of synths in this game represent this very notion. They hinder the flow of the 5 elements by preventing them from flowing from one state to the other, a man-made creation built from the feverish desire to stay alive at all costs. Lastly, essence within this game is easily identified as what the Bansen Shukai Seishin 2 calls the One Energy, or One Chi. Again, quote, "When this principle is felt and moved, it then changes into the One Chi, which forms the flow of energy. When the flow begins to move, it is called Yang, and when it finishes moving and is quiet, it is called Yin." We already mentioned how this game calls essence neither good nor evil, just like Yin and Yang, but rather a flow that has to keep balance, which was the entire mission of the clan, a flow that Dr. Projin was trying to disrupt and harvest for himself. The flow of essence had to continue, just as how the flow of One Chi, from movement to stillness, from Yin to Yang, also has to flow.
We know this is a lot to take in, but for any naysayers who think we're just reaching for a bunch of coincidences, well, let's just say that we've got some level of confirmation from the devs.
Well, we didn't do this to be right. We did this because from the complex story of Cyber Shadow, the story that so many reviewers brushed off as unnecessary, we are actually shown the philosophy and maybe even religion that Shinobi would follow in order to detach themselves from fear and death, because that's what Cyber Shadow is about. Fear of death. Fear of losing who you are, fear of losing who you love, fear of losing the ability to gain more. But as we've painfully gone over with this game and the Bansen Shukai, Ninja developed an iron will to do their job and did not fear death, for they believed they were a part of the 5 elements just as all things were. That the only thing that they should fear is being afraid. But don't worry gang, we didn't spoil everything in this game.
I could name one ninja. Though really he's not exactly a ninja, it's more like a cyborg. Let's just say that his nickname is Jack the Ripper. I think you should know who I'm talking about. Yeah. He doesn't fear death. He keeps fighting. Yeah. That's a good example right there. Continuing.
There's still tons of surprises in the story to uncover for yourself. So if you weren't convinced to pick up this ninja platformer before, we definitely hope you pick it up now.
Yeah, and keep an eye out for a few other Buddhist influences as well. You might just find a bodhisattva or two.
But a big thank you to Surfshark for sponsoring this video. And again, be sure to check out surfshark.deal/Gaijin and use the code Gaijin to get 83% off a 2-year plan plus 3 free months today. You know, we actually streamed the entirety of Cyber Shadow over on Twitch where we were breaking down all this cultural info live. So if a stream like that sounds like a good time, be sure to swing by. And speaking of good times, I talk about a lot of good times I've experienced living abroad in Japan over on my new channel Gaijin Perspective. So if you'd like a more personal take on my experiences with Japanese life and culture, be sure to check that out as well. But as always everyone, until next time, this is Gaijin Goomba, signing out.
And that was how Cyber Shadow teaches digital philosophy. And yeah, that's a really good philosophy right there. Yeah, I learned a lot. Though it's common to fear death, since, well, we don't know where we'll go after death, and yeah, it's a very deep philosophy. And yeah. Why is it no one ever talks about the story? Why is it that they think that it's bland? It sounds it sounds deep if you ask me. Yeah, I'm gonna have to disagree with the people who think it's bland. Because because a Gaijin, I realized that the story is actually pretty deep. Hmm. So, okay. Done here. Antonio Marijuana, signing out.